Hello everyone and welcome to this special evening, and a special welcome to you, David. Thank you all for your time and for being part tonight of this rich conversation with Opportunity International Australia's founder, David Bussau. We have people, and we're so excited to have people from all over Australia. We've got 160 people joining us for this wonderful conversation, which is incredible. Just to let you know, we'll be recording tonight, and we're just asking if you would put yourselves on mute to help us with that. My name is Nicole Clements. I'm an ex-ABC television journalist, and I now lend my skills to Opportunity International, which is a great privilege, as the head of communications and marketing, and I lead a wonderful team here of talented people. So it didn't take me long to find out and work out that David Bussau's story is one of the best yarns that I've ever heard. It really speaks to the heart and the soul of what Opportunity International is and represents, and the work we do with our wonderful clients, and we know that's supported by our wonderful supporters, so that is amazing. First, I would like to start by acknowledging the traditional custodians of this land, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation, their elders past and present, on whose land we are meeting today. I'd also like to acknowledge all the different lands where you're calling from tonight. Thank you for joining us from those many parts again. As many of you will know already, Opportunity provides small loans to women who are budding entrepreneurs in countries like India, Indonesia and Bangladesh. They're supporting them to start and expand their small businesses. This is life-changing work, and the loans are recycled and have a real multiplier effect in terms of poverty alleviation. Last year in Asia alone, Opportunity through Microfinance helped 6.5 million families with small loans and other financial services. So let's turn our attention to this wonderful man joining us tonight. David's contribution is nothing short of enormous. He's been recognised for his amazing work by being awarded the Order of Australia, named the Ernst Young Entrepreneur of the Year, chosen as one of Bulletin magazine's 10 most creative minds, awarded Senior Australian of the Year in 2008. Here's an excerpt from some of that wonderful historical footage of David when he won that award.
From orphan to entrepreneur, David Bussau was a self-made millionaire at 35 years of age when he decided that he wanted to give something back.
We don't ask the question often of ourselves, just how much is enough.
David's solution was to offer small business loans, giving people a hand up instead of a hand out.
We saw a need, and we could see by giving some of our friends just a small loan that would really help them.
David came to the conclusion that building infrastructure didn't solve the poverty issue. What you had to do is give people access to capital, to credit, so that they could then build their businesses.
That was the beginning of the program which we then called Opportunity International.
Currently, Opportunity International has $1.25 million loans to people in 23 countries. For a total of $500 million, it creates a job every 30 seconds of the day.
We are very, very proud, Mom. We are very, very proud and very, very happy and very, very thankful.
Just to let you know, we'll have some time for a few questions from our audience later tonight. So if while you have a burning, we're in discussion and you have a burning question, feel free to pop your question in the chat. So as you have seen from that video, David is an inspiring social entrepreneur. You were raised in an Anglican boys' home and started as an entrepreneur at age 15 with a rented hot dog stand, which is incredible. Then you became a pioneer of microfinance before the term even existed, giving a small loan of $50 to a struggling Indonesian farmer named Ketut, enabling him and his family to build a pathway out of poverty. On the other side of the world, Al Whittaker, also a businessman, had similar ideas, and you joined forces in 1979 to create the Global Opportunity Network. So David, you've just celebrated a birthday last Friday. You're still on and off planes doing consultancy work. How does it feel to be one of the founding fathers of not just Opportunity International Australia, but microfinance globally?
Well, thanks for inviting me onto this chat tonight, Nicole. It's a great privilege, of course, to have been able to sow the seeds of Opportunity International, and I'm grateful to God that He gave me the opportunity to introduce the concept that we have. In the very early days of Opportunity International, I was often referred to as a capitalist pig, because I dared to suggest that we could use wealth creation and market discipline as an effective tool for poverty alleviation, rather than the redistribution paradigm that was popular back nearly 50 years ago now. And it's rewarding to see that most development organisations around the world have adopted the opportunity model in some form, some type of small loan program using market discipline. And so it is gratifying to know that I was able to sow those early seeds.
It must have been interesting being called a capitalist pig.
Yes, and the reality was I was a capitalist pig, but had a different perspective on how you use capital and how you use wealth.
Tell us about your early days, David, as a young man. I know many have heard your story, but for those who haven't, growing up in an orphanage in New Zealand from age 6, which is extraordinary young age, did that forge your character and your strength and your resilience? And if so, how?
Yes, it certainly did. And I often quip to people that the best gift that God gave me was no parents. And the time in the boys' home taught me life skills that I find not many people get to learn these days. It was a 40-acre farm, self-supporting, so you learned how to milk cows, how to make butter, how to work in a bakery, how to grow vegetables. So life skills, I think, were the main aspects that helped me to be the person, and I believe that was God's grounding for me, giving me that opportunity again to use those gifts and talents. Yeah.
And so were there seeds of entrepreneurial spirit that were planted as well at that time from the orphanage?
I don't think so. It wasn't something that we were taught, but we were certainly taught discipline, certainly creative ways of solving problems. You just had to be innovative in the way that you faced different situations in life. With 40 other boys, very competitive situation.
I'm sure.
Yeah, but I believe that they were, the grounding and the compass, and we were always taught that we were projected onto the planet for a purpose.
Yes.
Not just for our own comfort, but for a purpose to serve humanity. And even though at a young age you didn't see how that could happen, it was something that was drilled into us at a very early age.
Do you think that some of the adversity that you experienced in the orphanage helped shape and create the entrepreneurial spirit in you, and I guess help you to resonate with many of those that we work with at Opportunity that really face adversity, and the women in communities that really struggle globally?
I'm sure it did, and I think the the situation of being brought up basically in a poverty context helped me to have an appreciation for others that also are going through those situations. So, yes, I think it was an important grounding again. But I think also I find with myself that it's the challenge that I like, not so much the success and the outcome, but the challenge of solving a problem. And I think with poverty alleviation and microfinance, it gave me an opportunity to look at a different way of solving poverty instead of the prevailing charitable redistribution.
Now, you've always had a colourful life, as we know. I've read this wonderful book, Don't Look Back. I don't know whether anyone's read that, by Philippa Tyndall, which was extraordinary, really. And basically, you've been detained in Pakistan, in summary, survived plane crashes, and you've also been taken by pirates. What has been your favourite adventure story, David?
Oh, they're all favourites, but I think the one that stands out for me is one in South Africa where I was apprehended by some thugs who held a knife at my throat, stole everything that I had, and then left me. And I reported it to the police, and the police sergeant said, "You were lucky because they stole my gun."
Oh my gosh.
The same people. And then just the next day, I was in Soweto at a church service, and a drive-by with machine guns just fired into the church.
Oh my goodness.
And everybody, ducked for cover, of course. But yeah, I think they were the two situations that stand out for me.
Oh, amazing, incredible stories. Now, moving on to your wonderful success as an entrepreneur, tell us about how you worked to create businesses in the construction industry, so much so that you were able to retire in your 40s. How is that even possible? And do you feel blessed to have had such success so early in life?
Yeah, I certainly do. And once again, I think one of my character flaws is that I can't hold on to things. I've got to move on to the next challenge. I've got to find something to do. So I had 15 different businesses by the time I'd 15 by the time I'd retired, and they were mainly in the food industry and then in construction. And once again, I think in poverty alleviation, it was the challenge of coming up with a different model that had a lasting impact and was sustainable, rather than the charitable handout paradigm that was prevalent in those days.
So it started with the hot dog stand, and then went far further, didn't it?
It did, yes. And once again, I thank God for the gifts of being creative and being entrepreneurial. And I think learning the power of letting go, how that really strengthens you rather than holds you back. So,
what do you mean by letting go? Letting go of the...
I found that in the businesses that I had, I'd get them successful to a point and then lose interest in them. And then I want to move on to another challenge. And not wanting to hold on to those things. I found that one of the things in life that has been very helpful for me is the concept of not owning anything. And I think I was able to retire with that sense of I didn't need more possessions. I didn't have to acquire more more. And I think that's one of the problems that we have nowadays, is that this obsession with having more.
Yeah. We're going to ask you a little bit more about that in a minute. But I've had a burning question, and it is, what was it like to work with Kerry Packer, one of Australia's richest men, and, you know, what was he like?
My experience with Kerry was very, very good. And what stood out for me with Kerry was his dedication to his family.
Yes.
I don't know if you saw the movie The Sound of Music, but the prince in that used to line the kids up at the top of the stairs and inspect them before they went to school. And I noticed that with Kerry Packer. He was a man who demanded discipline and quality, but I understand he was extremely generous and very sensitive to those people that had need around him. So my experience with Kerry was very good.
Yeah, wonderful. People are multifaceted too, aren't they? You've always had a passion, David, as we know, for those most marginalised. How easy was it to transfer your entrepreneurial gifts from the business world to the not-for-profit world? That must have been interesting for you.
It was, but it was a natural thing to happen. You know, I moved from construction to go into Cyclone Tracy on Christmas Day 1974, just using my construction experience and knowledge and the team of men that I had. So, you know, once again here's an opportunity for me and a challenge to take it on. Funnily enough, disasters were one of the things which I found really challenging. You know, the tsunami in 2004 that, you know, hit Indonesia and Thailand. I came up with creative ways of how to create jobs for people.
Tell us about that just a little bit, David.
Well, there was over 238,000 people in Aceh that lost their lives with that tsunami. And I was invited to go there to see what we could do. So one of the biggest responses was to build new houses for people. So I went there and I said, look, there's all this building materials that's lying around. Can't we take those materials and turn them into things that are going to be used for houses? Houses needed doors, they needed windows, they needed roof tiles. So we set up a factory that would take timber that was lying around, take a contract with a not-for-profit that was building houses, to supply them with 200 doors, 400 windows. So it was a commercial approach using the spoils of a disaster and creating jobs for people.
The phoenix from the ashes, almost.
Yes. So that was a sort of challenge that, you know, that I enjoy, is coming up with a solution that hasn't been attempted before.
Incredibly creative too.
And that's a blessing. That's a blessing to be creative. Sorry.
What was the result of that? What ended up being?
Well, it was a for-profit thing to start off with. So it created jobs. One of the biggest achievements was that it created jobs for people. People collecting timber, which we paid them to do, and then building the doors and windows created jobs as well. So I think the biggest impact was that we were creating those opportunities for people to have an income.
Yes, yeah, wonderful. Well, David, you touched on it before, but tell me about the economics of enough, what it is and how we can best understand this approach to generosity. I mean, Australia is one of the wealthiest nations in the region. We are surrounded by a lot of countries that experience, you know, quite extensive poverty. What is economics of enough, and what is it? What's the approach?
I think for each one of us is different, but I think for me it's basically how much do you need to sustain your lifestyle. So it really depends on the level of quality of life that you want, and you know, how many acquisitions, how many possessions do you need. And I think coming to realise that our consumer culture these days just makes it easier for us to own more things. And I've just found in life that the more things you own, the more they own you. And so they start dictating to you your lifestyle, the way you relate to people, your connections in community. So for me, it's really is a simple question of what standard of living are you comfortable with that's not excessive. And it's different for everyone. You know, each of us have a different way of, a different level, I think, of deciding what's enough.
Is it about contribution to and growth?
Well, I think, for me anyway, it was a point of realising that, you know, God had blessed me to be an entrepreneur. And making money wasn't a problem. But you get to the point, but what do you do with the money? What do you do with that blessing? And I'm convinced that the only reason that we're blessed is in order to bless others.
Yes.
And in doing that, then you have a better quality of life.
Yes.
You feel more fulfilled in that you were able to share the blessings that God's given you for the benefit of others. And it's a similar principle, I think, that you find in the scriptures, is that you get joy out of serving people and contributing to the lives of others. Yes. So for me, the concept of the economics enough really is an individual thing that you need to be prompted by God to decide how much is enough.
I feel really deeply inspired myself about that, and I know many others out there do too. I've always wondered about Ketut, you know, the Indonesian farmer that started this whole journey. Why didn't you just give him the money, and what were you thinking at the time? Because he did have a very challenging circumstance, I remember, but, you know, why didn't you just give him the money?
Yeah, I know, I'm asked that question often. Why didn't I give him the money? I think the first thing was really that I was a businessman. And I just haven't found that charity on its own is the best way to help a person. Charity doesn't give a person dignity at all. Yeah. It helps to create the victim mentality. Yeah. And there's much more joy for a person and dignity if they can return the loan that you've given them. Yeah. And then again, that loan can bless somebody else. So once again, you've blessed somebody with resources which they've returned, and has a knock-on effect in terms of blessing in the community. So with Ketut, he was a rice farmer, a tenant farmer. He didn't own the land. He was a tenant farmer. And their son had been mortgaged to the landowner because they weren't able to, they had some bad seasons, the crop wasn't big enough, and they weren't able to repay the landowner for his share of the harvest. So Ketut said his wife was a very good sower. So we loaned him $50, and she made clothes, and then they were able to redeem their son. I mean, for me, that was the most powerful thing, was that their son, who had been mortgaged to the landowner, was redeemed and was free again, you know.
Incredible story that, David. As one of the pioneers of microfinance globally, how does it actually make a difference in your view? What's the secret source of poverty alleviation that occurs through microfinance?
For me, micro-enterprise development, or microfinance, some people call it, really is only a springboard. It's only a platform to breathe life into a community. It's not about a transaction. That was never my intention, to set up an global organisation that was focusing on transactions. And with microfinance, it's the connections that you have to the communities, the partnerships that you have with people, that makes it as successful as it is. It's not about banking, or it's not about making a profit. It's really about breathing life into a community where there can be wholeness, there can be holistic activities. We can be concerned about their health, their education, their housing, their nutrition. So microfinance is really just a platform for us to springboard into holistic activities within the community.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because Opportunity International Australia does wonderful programs in health, education and women's safety, which is sort of part and interconnected with the microfinance, so which does create holistic change, as you say. Do you still believe in its power to transform lives? Like, it's 2023, a lot of things have changed. You know, do you still believe in it as a systems change tool or poverty alleviation tool?
I still believe in it, and I think the power of microfinance really is validated when you look at the intergenerational impact. So it's not just the people that you give a loan to, but how did that impact their children? And at Opportunity, we've had nearly 50 years of experience where we can see how that knock-on effect and impact in the next generation has really contributed to people taking themselves out of poverty and benefiting a wider community, because I don't think it's about the individual. I think it's about the wider community. And I have just noticed that the strength is in microfinance, is that if we can hold families together, families are the basic unit of our society. And poverty and economic constraints are one of the things that splits families. So what I love about Opportunity is that we can hold families together through just providing small loans that are going to create income for them to do that. We just look at our own societies. The lack of finances can destroy a family. So what I'm really grateful about is that Opportunity is really impacting the basic unit of society, which is the family.
Beautiful. And it's a great name as well, isn't it? Opportunity.
It is.
They don't get better than that. Just a final question for you, David, and I love what my CEO recently said. He was asked to speak at the ACFID conference, the peak body for international development, and he said, you know, what's great is that someone who gave 20 years ago, that money is still recycling and it's going on to other families, and it's just the gift that keeps giving, which I think is just incredible. Why, in your opinion, you know, we've got a lot of global conflict, we've got a lot of challenge in the world. Why is it more important than ever to support organisations working in international development?
Well, I don't think we should be laying a guilt trip on people, but I think for those of us who really feel blessed, we have an obligation to share that blessing. And I think the joy that you get out of seeing somebody else blessed is the real value of supporting an international organisation and helping that organisation to change people's lives. And people that are struggling, people that are marginalised, just need that little injection into them that's going to make a difference for them.
Thank you so much, David. It's so wonderful to hear you speak. You speak so beautifully about and so inspirationally about a lot of different things. I have a few questions from the chat now, and I just wanted to also put those to you. So someone has said, how do you think microfinance will evolve in the future, actually, from 2023 onwards? And do you think faith-based organisations are losing their original mission?
There's certainly a danger that we all lose our mission. Competition is one of the biggest threats, I think, to faith-based organisations. We're finding commercial entities, banks, are getting into the marketplace, and so there is a competition, I think, for funds. But I think the biggest issue is employment. So our project officers, our loan officers, are being swallowed up by commercial for-profit companies, offered higher salaries, which creates a vacuum in the faith-based organisations. So I think the other danger that we need to look at and face the challenge is the digitalisation of funding. One of the strengths of the opportunity programs has been that we can bring groups together, and that there's training and sharing and mutual accountability. But digitalisation has the threat of destroying and undermining that component of our programs.
Because you spoke earlier to me as well about relationships and how being relationship focused is really key.
Because what I found is that in communities, poor people coming from poverty situations are much better at sharing than those of us from an affluent context. So I find the poor, even if they have a little, they'll share it with the community. And with the opportunity groups as they meet together, there is a sharing of issues and problems. It could be health problems. People help each other. And I think that is critical that we retain that dynamic of the groups meeting together to learn skills and how to manage their enterprise.
To keep community. I have another question. So someone from the audience has said, how does one impress the economics of enough on friends and others who are in this private sector and on the corporate treadmill? How do you think they can impress the economics of enough on fellow co-workers maybe?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I really don't know how you do that, Nicole. I think, once again, you can't make people feel guilty.
Of course not.
I think all you can do is just share with people the joy that you get out of having enough and sharing your excess, basically, with others. It's only by an example. That's the only way that I can think of that you are going to impress other people with that concept.
But we were saying before as well, and talking earlier about you know, there's been some research done about the happiest people are usually the people that give back in life.
Truly. Yeah. But in our consumer society, peer group pressure is a problem, you know, and people's, once again, it's a quality of life that people want to protect. And I think until we can get past that issue that, you know, we have enough. We don't need more, and what our excess can be used to bless others. I think it's only an example that people are going to say, maybe I should try that.
Yeah, give it a try.
Yes.
In what ways, there's another question from the audience, in what ways do governments assist and enable this work? Do governments get in the way and inhibit the work that Opportunity is doing, or can they be helpful?
Well, I'm sure they could be helpful, but there are constraints with the use of government funds, which are basically taxpayers' money. So there are constraints as to what you can do, and often commercial funding or institutional funding, there are limits on what you can use the funding for. Yes. So there can be constraints. But there are many foundations out there where people can give undesignated funds. And you have an option to be creative in how you can apply that to health or education or various forms of holistic ministries.
So now I would like to introduce our CEO of Opportunity, Scott Walters, who's going to share a few words with you.
Thanks, Nicole. And David, we stand on the shoulders of giants like you, and for that I thank you, and I can assure you we feel blessed to be able to do that. Ladies and gentlemen, David's work has achieved so much in the last 50 years, and so many families have found pathways out of poverty for themselves, but there is still more to do. And you can play your part in helping families craft a pathway out of poverty for themselves, put food on the table, clothes on their backs, and of course, importantly for many, send the kids to school. And I talk here about families like Aranchi's. I had the privilege to meet with Aranchi in Rote Island in Indonesia last August. And her story is typical. She and her husband Abraham had struggled to put food on the table for their family. They couldn't afford meat, they couldn't afford milk, they certainly couldn't afford rice, and so their staple diet was corn. Aranchi heard about an opportunity in Rote in seaweed farming, and so set out with Abraham and the kids and established a seaweed operation. But it was so small that the yield from the small amount of seeds that she was able to obtain was just not enough to sustain the business, until she heard about the opportunity to get a loan from Opportunity International Australia. And with that money, she started a seaweed farm. And I had the privilege to go out in that canoe that you can see in the background of the photo. Her husband Abraham carved that out of a single tree log, and Aranchi took me out into the water, that narrow laneway there, to her seaweed farm. The problem still was the yield was just not enough, and so Abraham had to go back to another island 2,000 kilometres away to try to earn enough money, which he couldn't on Rote, to support the family. But progressively, the seaweed farm grew, and Aranchi was able to support the family, send the kids to school, until May of this year, when we heard that Abraham's work dried up on the island that he was working on. He's now back on Rote with the family, but they're still struggling. And it's this, ladies and gentlemen, that I just want to draw your attention to as we head into Christmas and into our Christmas appeal. I'd love you to join us, and I wouldn't be doing my job as Chief Executive if I didn't ask if you've been moved by what you've heard tonight, if you want to continue the great work that was started and founded by David Bussau, then please consider giving generously to Opportunity International this Christmas. A QR code, I'm told, will appear on the screen. There'll also be a link to our appeal page in the chat. And may I, on behalf of everyone at Opportunity International and also people like Aranchi, say a sincere thanks to you in advance for your generosity. Back to you, Nicole.
Well, that concludes our evening. We hope you felt inspired by our conversation tonight with the wonderful David, and that you stay connected to us and continue on the journey with Opportunity. It really truly changes lives, and it's been so wonderful having your company. And David, we can't thank you enough. It's been such an honour. Yeah, thank you. Bye for now.